an intriguing one that I have ever addressed in my career. The topic of today, the edge of certainty. In our life, we keep oscillating between uncertainty and certainty. It's a very, very delicate dance. During the process of this dance, often we are in throes of uncertainty. Understandably, uncertainty produces a little bit of insecurity and lots of anxiety. And we evolve different methods to cope with it, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so successfully. That said, uncertainty and insecurity can also inspire a creative muse, as we see in many works of arts and literature. What is the uncertainty that I'm going to talk today? Certainty and uncertainty was a very abstract concept for me, and quite a lot of time I was musing, if things are so uncertain in life, what is certain in life? What is certain in life is the end of our life. And often we don't talk much about it because it produces quite a bit of discomfort, and we avoid talking about death or the end of life. A very chance encounter during my fellowship in London, I walked into the National Gallery of Art in Trafalgar Square and I saw this painting. Somehow, I was deeply attracted to this painting. This painting by Zurbaran portrays a saint in a very stark background. His head is covered with hood and he's looking up. And he's looking up with a skull in his hands. Now, what is he meditating on? Is he meditating on death and dying? Or is he contemplating as to what lies beyond when we pass our last breath and we make inroads into the region of the unknown? The region of the unknown for us is the dark territory. Quite often we don't experience that. But a chance encounter with a slew of Polans really ushered me into that landscape. The place where we were living in Bangalore at the time was surrounded by large fields of Parthenium. As you're aware, Parthenium came along the wheat that was donated by the US, and the pollens of the Parthenium wheat are extremely allergenic. So what happened was, being exposed to those pollens, I started having terrible cough. The cough lasted all through the day, but it was much worse during the night. And I spent several nights in throes of coughing and coughing. In one such episode, when I was coughing intensely, I felt that I was transported into a territory which was totally unknown to me. It was the most beautiful experience that I've ever had. It was like a cosmic journey. I kept on, in the short period of a few minutes, the intense joy that I experienced was totally unimaginable and indescribable. That it was not so comforting for my wife, on whose hands I was lying, because she felt that I had passed away. So it was when she was thumping my chest, I came alive. When I came alive, it was after a return, as if it was after a space journey. I didn't feel any pain. I felt, is it possible for a person who experiences the end of life to go through a phase in which there is pleasure and not pain? That was a very, very important turning point in my life. Quite often when we confront certainty and certainty of death, we feel it's a huge void. And that void can increase our sense of helplessness and insecurity. But when I was in that void, it inspired me. I flew with the wings of discovery. discovery of a world which I never knew before, discovery into a sojourn of the unknown. It was a very transformative experience for me. What is important in our life is not the experiences themselves, but how we interpret and assign meaning to it. And that made a difference in terms of coming to term with an experience which is often called as a near-death experience. The question then is, if I detail all this, what has been the impact on me other than going into that experience and coming back to daily life? What kind of impact did it have on my personal and professional life? In my personal life, it played a huge role in terms of reducing the anxiety associated with death and end of life. Before that, as a medical practitioner, death was an anathema for me. As a medical practitioner, my entire goal was to sustain life. An end of life is a kind of a defeat for any kind of medical practitioner. So the fear overwhelmed quite a lot of times, and this experience turned it around. I was no more scared of the end of life. Professionally, that kind of awareness also helped me in many, many ways in terms of attending to people who are in throes of their last breath of life. If you ask me personally, it is the most intensive experience that I have ever had in terms of attending to the emotional needs of persons who are nearing their death. That is a very, very important learning curve for me personally and professionally. I translated it into our family life too. With the help of my very close physician friend, we took care of 5 elderly persons at home. All of them died in the midst of all the relatives and spent their entire life not really regretting, but cherishing every moment that they spent with the family. So the death that occurred in the family is different from the death that occurs in a medical setting. Unfortunately, what happens in the medical setting is the medicalization of death. As I mentioned earlier, the purpose and orientation of medicine is to sustain and sometimes extend life. And in the last couple of decades, we know how to sustain and extend life with a lot of life support systems. As a consequence, many of the elderly are spending the last days of their life in isolated ICUs. They don't know what is going to happen to them. Not much of information is shared to them. And the monotony of the ICU, lack of information, heightens their anxiety. And they are not in a frame of mind other than that of overwhelming fear as to what will happen to them. So what modern medicine has done is the passing away of life, which I feel could be a sacred act, has become a sterile one. In the process, death has become a problem that has to be clinically solved. We must learn that the passing of the last breath is not a battle cry, but a whisper of grace. And it is very important for the medical professional to take cognizance of this and incorporate it so that they can really attend to the needs of the deceased of the person. The question is, how do we balance the gifts of medicine with the requirements of those who are in the end stage of their life? As I mentioned earlier, we have to humanize it. How do we humanize it? How do we make sure that we attend to them with care and concern? That can happen if in all our medical education and training, we are exposed not just to identify and diagnose and treat diseases, but also come to terms that we as medical professionals cannot really prevent death. We will be by their side. We will help them to face the consequences of pain and suffering so that they can face the death prospect with equanimity. Unfortunately, such kind of input is not given in any medical training in the country. Because as I said earlier, the entire purpose is relieve pain, treat the disease. If it is an infection, antibiotic. If a person dies, that's it. His life ends. So the doctors are short of words in terms of when they are by the bedside, for more than telling them about the illness, they are not capable of addressing the suffering of the person at that stage in life. So it is very, very important that in the medical training, we incorporate a phase in which we train the young doctors as to how they can help a person at the end of their lives. That can happen the moment we recognize that people who are dying are also living. When people are dying, we presume that they are not living. Any amount of active listening to their suffering, to their questions, to their clarification that they seek will be immensely helpful. Active listening is a very important healing strategy. Just for the clinician to sit by the side, hold the hand, comfort the person, ask as to what is troubling him in ways that can reassure him, but without giving any kind of false hope, will go a long way in reducing his fear and apprehension. In doing so, we'll have to attune ourselves to the cultural background of the person and scale our inputs so that we are in tune with those cultural aspirations and background. Particularly, I feel the most important way to face the end of life is to be totally aware of it, to be mindful about it. Being mindful is not denying death. Being mindful is not reducing the kind of fear that you'll have. But being mindful means that you live in the present moment. You cherish the present moment and you optimally enjoy every moment of your life without constantly getting preoccupied as to how I will die, what will happen to me when I die. Because the way we live is equally important than the way we die too. What is the most important aspect of the mindful way of facing death is to accept the impermanence in life. We cannot deny it, we cannot hide away from that. So when I come to terms with the impermanence of that my life, it gives me a certain framework of wisdom to cope with the end of my life. Our life is like a dewdrop which is balancing on a leaf. It is gently oscillating between presence and disappearance. In that brief moment, the dewdrop will shine within itself, but it is fully aware that it's going to be a transient moment, and any moment it will fall down on the earth. That need not really make us feel uneasy. When we know that our end is near, it is also important for us to prepare for it. Will to live is equally important, but will to die well is much more important. How do we ensure that we die well? As I mentioned earlier, there are very many steps that we can initiate in terms of caring for the persons at the end of their life. But in addition, operationally, we can help them practically to prepare them for the end of their life. And for that, we have to focus on 3 wills. We are aware of the first will, the legal will. The legal will in which you bequeath all your earnings, property, and all that your family members and loved ones. That said, even legal will meets with a lot of emotional resistance in an average Indian. Quite a considerable amount of Indians do not even consider preparing a legal will and it causes immense discomfort to those in the family members who have to bear the consequences that this person has not left a will. What is more important is what I would call as a legacy will. What is legacy will? Legacy will is sharing stories. Each one of us have a storied existence in our life. So when we come closer to the end of our life, share their stories with loved ones, near ones, the family members. Many of them will not be aware of the kind of life a particular person has led, the kind of joys and pleasures and problems that he faced. So sharing those intimate life stories at the end of your life or before the end of this life is what is legacy will. And that, I feel, will play a very, very important role in addressing the grief that occurs to the family members when a close family member dies. The third important will is advanced directives. In the last couple of years, Indian legal system has taken a lead in terms of realizing the importance of the advanced directives, and I hope sometime the legal steps to really implement it is also in place. What I would particularly urge is, when you know your life is certain and you're going to die somewhere, sometime, let us engage in mortality talk. What do I mean by mortality talk? Let us talk about how I will face death. What are the kind of experiences I'll have to really inculcate so that I face death with equanimity and affection to the loved ones. In order to do that, it is very, very important, number one, for the medical professional to be sensitive to the needs of those at the end of their lives, the patients and their families to also prepare that there is one certainty in life, and that is death, and we have to really handle it. So let's start having a conversation. Let's start having a dialogue. And this particular TED Talk of mine is really to focus that let us talk about death. In one of the earliest of the Upanishads, Keno Upanishad, had a beautiful chapter in which there was a description about how a person faces the end of this life and what are the kind of things that can unfold after his death, and to prepare the person for that. That's in the spiritual domain. But even beyond that, as medical professionals, family members, patients, caregivers, we can all sit, discuss, and evolve ways of coping with the end of life. Often when we talk about death, it comes as a rude shock. It's as if somebody is shutting the door suddenly and taking us by surprise. Yet at the same time, it is a threshold. It's a threshold in which a person can pass through with our help, with our compassion, with our care, with our love and deep affection. I think it is very, very important for us to pay attention to it and start discussing about it. Thank you so much.